Like I was probably about like 5, 6 years into my career before I realized, oh, wait, hard work doesn't help me get promoted. We all play a role. Honestly, I think no one is their most authentic self at work. It is on you to own it. Your career is your responsibility. You can't outwork a bad boss. I truly believe there is no girls club. When you're in like really difficult situations, like you can sit in it or you can figure out a way out. No, this was not on my bingo card at all.
Welcome to Loud and Lifted. I'm your host, Betsy Ham. Today, I'm talking with Roxy Couse, a former Fortune 500 corporate leader turned creator, career voice, and founder who talks about work in a way that more people need to hear it. Honest, practical, and with zero corporate fluff. Roxy has built a huge platform on social by saying the quiet parts out loud, like the fact that hard work alone does not get you promoted. And in her words, sometimes it just gets you more work. In this conversation, we get into all of the hard truths: visibility, personal branding, bad bosses, why your manager's reputation matters, and how to stop waiting for someone else to magically notice your potential. We also talk about what it really means to build something on your own and why creating options for yourself might be the biggest life upgrade of all.
Welcome to Loud and Lifted, Roxy. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So, you talk a lot about careers, personal branding, boundaries to, a few thousand people on social media, like pretty amazing gig. But you have a corporate experience to back up what you talk about. So, and now you're also building your own thing. So, we're going to talk about some really interesting perspectives that you have today. And we're going to start somewhere uncomfortable. You talk a lot about the hard truths. So let's get into it. What's the biggest hard truth you think that women have been told or sold from a corporate perspective?
Yeah, I think there's so many. One of the first ones that I ever talked about on social media was around that performance alone will not get you promoted. And I I think it being an eldest daughter, a millennial, I always thought that, I kept my head down, I did my job. Eventually I was going to rise to the top. I did not. I was taking so many lateral moves and I just didn't understand why. And one of the things I always talk about is like hard work gets you more work. And
True.
when you're invisible, no one is going to be speaking your name in rooms that you're not in. And so there's just like these methods and these things that I've learned the hard way that I talk about through my content today.
And how far were you in your career when you came to this realization?
So far in my career, my first job I had, I remember I every time a role came open, I was like, oh, I'm going to apply because I was very hardworking. New process. I'm like, I can do it. I would take it. I would own it. I would set the standard of like how we actually get things done. But every time a new job would come open, it wouldn't go to me. And
Hmm.
finally, people started quitting. And every time somebody would quit, they would give it to someone else. They'd find someone else. And finally, they were like, Roxy, we're going to give this job to you. And I was grateful, but also it just kind of left the sour taste in my mouth. And so like I was probably about like 5, 6 years into my career before I realized, oh, wait, this I'm hard work doesn't help me get promoted. And I also had this realization that in order to promote myself, I had to keep leaving companies. Like I had to
Mm.
keep promoting myself out of companies, and that gets exhausting. Like maybe I want to stay where I'm at. So if you do want to stay where you're at, you do have to figure out like how do I thrive in these spaces? Like what is going to help me to get to where I'm trying to go?
So, what is the answer to that?
Yeah. So one, it's visibility. I talk about on social media this the cost of being invisible is too high. And I'm an introvert. A lot of people don't know that about me, but I'm an introvert. I was telling someone that I was in this role and I had taken these several lateral moves. I sat right by the bathroom. So it was like a lot of foot traffic. I never spoke to anyone. People would pass. Like there was this opportunity for me to just be like, hey, because when you're an introvert or like you're just not necessarily comfortable with small talk, one of the best ways to do it is it's one-to-one interactions. Maybe you
Hmm.
don't feel comfortable talking in a meeting, but if you can catch somebody one-on-one, and I realized that was my superpower, just one-on-one conversations. But in that particular role, I never talked to anyone. And so when it came to review time and they're like, yes, Roxy did do a great job, but we're not giving her a higher rating because we don't think that like she necessarily deserves it. We don't even know
I
people
don't
in
even
the
know what
company.
you do.
We don't know who this is. And so that those are the things like you have to figure out how to be strategically visible in corporate spaces. And I teach a lot about personal branding. Like, no, we can't afford to not elevate or invest in our personal brand. And that's one part of it is like being more visible inside of corporate rooms and outside.
You bring up a great point because we talk about visibility, exposure a lot. Pie is one of my favorites, which I saw you did some content on that not that long ago.
Hmm.
But to your point, it's not about being an introvert. Like you just have to figure out where you're comfortable and that one-on-one piece. And sometimes I hear, well, I don't know how to start. I don't know how to start the conversation. Do you have any advice on somebody who wasn't super extroverted to just how you started to engage with people at work?
Yeah, I think it starts with a simple like, "Hey, hi, how are you?" One thing that happens, and actually, I'm a person that I'm gonna find a work bestie at work, but I have to do that by it's like slowly integrating myself into getting to know this person. Like I don't want to know about your weekend plans. I'm just that person. Like I don't want to know about your weekend plans. I'm very much about the work, but if I can start to like integrate myself into conversation, like, hey, how are you doing? And then eventually doing that, you start to learn more about people and how they think. Corporate people are like some of the funniest people I've ever met, but like for the longest time in my career, nobody was being funny. That's why part of my content
Mm.
is like it's humor. Like guys, like it's not that serious. And I just love when I find out these little tidbits about people, and it can be overwhelming at first if somebody like overshares. And I'm like, oh wait, I wasn't ready to know this about you, but once we start to have these conversations, these one-on-one conversations, I learn more about you. That really helps me, and I think that is so important. I think a lot of people think that, like, when it comes to networking, we think we have to go to these like huge networking events, and we need to go to these happy hours and like talk to everybody in the room, and that's literally not how it happens. It just is these very intimate one-on-one conversations, getting to know someone, and eventually you just start to build this network of people who know who you are and you know who they are, and how you can support each other. And I think that is the best way to go about even being more visible.
Absolutely. And so for somebody starting out with this, how do they come across or not feel fake, right? Like sometimes I've heard that, oh, that's not who I am. It's not how I'm comfortable. So how do I make sure we're not being fake when we start doing this?
I think that we all play a role. Honestly, I think no one is their most authentic self at work. Honestly, like I just feel like that's just the reality of what it is. Who I am in my house when I'm every other word is a cuss word. Like, no, I'm not showing up at work that way. Like, I wouldn't have a job. So I do think that we do have a professional hat and we have who we are outside of work. And you don't have to marry these two people together. You like being like myself, like I'm a homebody. If I saw someone at work at the grocery store outside of work, I'm probably gonna hide. Like I don't want to talk to you. But at work, that's different because I know that in order to achieve my goals, I need to be more collaborative. I need to interact with people. It's just that's the cost of trying to get where you're trying to go. It's like leaning in a little bit. And I don't think that there's anything authentic or inauthentic about doing that. Like you literally have this North Star, this goal, and you can't just be sitting in your cubicle and not getting to know people or interacting or being in these meetings, and you have this thought and not sharing, but at the end of the day you're expecting to grow your career, get promoted, have more be on more high visibility projects. It's just like that's just the cost of doing business. Like we all have to lean in a little.
That's a great way of putting it. And it's funny because I was thinking of it's part of playing the game. And I struggle with that concept, right? Because it's a game. Well, kinda, like, there's winners and
Mhm.
there's losers, right? So, that to me, that's just it's part of playing the game, whether that's the best way to use it. That's just the reality of especially in bigger corporate organizations, and again, you've been Fortune 500 company, so you've been there, you've done that, you know the rules, the unspoken
Mhm.
rules.
Yeah, exactly. I definitely think it is a part of playing the game, and honestly, I don't think that there's any winners or losers in the game, but it is and I think a part of playing the game is actually knowing that the game exists and there is a
Mm,
game that you are playing. So just even being aware of the fact that okay, being the hardest worker does not guarantee that I'm going to get the exposure that I want or I'm going to get promoted at the end of the day. That is a part. Just being aware that the game exists is also a part of playing the game.
very true. That's very true. So you talked about the building the relationship piece, which I agree is totally important, and that helps with the visibility, but how do you suggest sort of giving your like, tooting your own horn, giving yourself credit, like, putting that visibility of building, like, "Hey, I'm doing this great work." I hear women say, like, "I feel like I'm bragging, it was a team effort," all these reasons that they minimize the impact. So how have you approached that in the past?
I've gone in both directions. I have not spoken to my accomplishments, and then no one knew what I was doing. I have oversold my accomplishments, and then I was told I need to play for the team on the front of the jersey, not the back. So, like, but I truly believe that you have to speak to your accomplishments. Like, you have to find these opportunities to share, like, what you did and what your contribution was, because your rating and how you're viewed within the organization is not within the team scope. Like everyone is rated individually, and so if everything you do is that was because of the team, then what's your contribution? So you have to be strategically speaking to your impact. I think this is so important, and it's going to feel so cringe when you do it and you're just going to be like, "Ugh, why did I do that?" Like I don't want people to be like, this is about me, especially when you're a manager too. It's like, when do you find those opportunities to speak to your work and your contribution when you're always trying to toot the horn of your team? But it's totally necessary. And one of the things that I don't think people understand is that sure, you speaking to your accomplishments, like maybe you feel like, oh, this is making my manager look bad, or my manager already knows what I do. Why do I need to actually share more broadly? I say, don't let your manager get in the way of your career, because
Mm,
maybe that information is staying with your manager, but the people in those calibrations are much higher than your manager and they have no idea who you are. And so if you can find those opportunities for you to actually speak to it, like, oh yeah, that I had this idea, my team carried it, we contributed to the organization this way, you have to do it. You have to get comfortable with speaking to your own accomplishments.
I love that, and especially, what if your manager's not respected?
That's one of my hard truths that I said. You, if your manager is not respected within the organization, if no one listening to what your manager has to say, you're not getting promoted. Because if they go into a calibration and they're like, oh, this person is amazing, no one's listening to them. No one cares. And so sometimes we do get stuck under managers who are not respected within the organization. I think this is also a part of playing the game. You have to know you're in those rooms. If you're in meetings with your manager, read the room. Look at body language when your manager talks. It can kind of help you to understand, is this person respected? And if they are not, this is going to be a hindrance to my career. So how do I drive visibility for myself and my impact outside of my direct line of reporting structure?
That is so important, and I learned that early on in my career. I had a boss that people didn't respect, and she liked me. She would say good things about me, but she wasn't respected, and I suddenly realized even if she was saying my name in a room, nobody cared. Nobody cared because they didn't respect her. So, I
Right.
strategically had to be intentional about building relationships and not excluding her, but around her, to her peers, to people who would also be in that room who would be like, "Oh, wait, yeah, Betsy, yeah, she's great." So it was not being malicious or doing anything to her. It was just building around her, and that absolutely impacted my career early on because otherwise I might well, I wouldn't still be there, but it would have a whole different path for sure. So that's really important. That kind of leads into something else that you talk about is that no one's coming to save you. So talk to me about that.
Yes, I feel like this is the most important thing to realize about your career. Of course, you meet people in your career journey that can help you to get to the next level or help you to get to different spots in your career, but honestly, it is on you to own it. Your career is your responsibility. And I think that this is one of the most important lessons we can learn early on in our career. It's not your manager's job to advocate for you. They should, but it's not necessarily their responsibility because they're also playing the game. They're trying to advocate for themselves. So you have to really own your career, and what that looks like for you is could be totally different from someone else. One of the things I always say is that a career is personal. And so there have been different times in my career where people were like, oh, well, why are you already leaving this company? And I'm like, well, I am trying to get here and I've exhausted all of my resources and opportunities here. So I have to make a move. And it could be whether it be financial or whatever your goals are, you are in control. Like you have to sit in the driver's seat of your career. Because if you don't, someone else is going to do that for you. And you might end up somewhere where you did not want to be.
That's so true. And we talk a lot about sponsors and mentors and who's in your circle. And that's all really important, but they're not accountable for you moving on in your career. And you have to have that initiative. And I think that's a really important piece to clarify that, yes, build your circle, have the mentors, have the right people in your circle, but it's you taking accountability and that responsibility to do that. So if someone hears that and they're like, ooh, yeah, I need to do that. What does that look like? How do we take some of those steps?
Yeah, I think the one thing that I always did with my teams, and actually something that I had, and I've talked about this in content, was I always maintain this career compass for myself. I'm like, okay, so where do I actually want to be in 3 years? Where do I want to be in 5 years? What skills do I need to get there? What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? I think being self-aware of your skills and ability also helps, like being really real with yourself. Early in my career, I'm like, I'm amazing, I don't understand why I'm not getting promoted. But then it's like when an executive or somebody would walk past me, I would freeze and I wouldn't talk to them. So it's like there was an opportunity for me to grow in my soft skill development and all of these things. And so I do think that you should have this sort of roadmap for yourself and be mindful of that. So like for a real example of that is I had this goal that, okay, I want to be at a senior manager level by this time frame. Titles aren't everything, but it's where it was something that I really wanted. And I had been a manager for a really long time. I was trying to grow, and I was being told by my manager, like, you need to spend 2 more years in this role. And I'm like, well, I don't have 2 years because I don't want to be in this role for 2 more years.
That's a long
And
time.
so, yeah, so I promoted myself on out of that organization. And I think those are those things. It's like, even if you have mentors and sponsors, they might be telling you something that is in conflict with where you're trying to go. And just because someone has been around the block for much longer than you does not necessarily mean that their advice is Bible. Like you need to do what's best for yourself and like your goals and achievements. And so that's what I just think you have to have this roadmap for your career and really think about how you can get there. And I just feel like that will help you as you carry on with your journey.
Absolutely. And I totally agree with that. It's not funny, it's not the word to use, but it's interesting that the most popular episodes that we have done on this podcast over the last year are about bad bosses. It's the micromanager, it's the narcissist, it's there's 13 types of bad bosses. So obviously a lot of women out there are dealing with bad bosses, right? Clearly, unfortunately. That's life. You're gonna have some great ones, you're gonna have some that aren't. So when you're in that situation, how do we navigate around that? How do we deal with that? And to your point, have that compass that we're focused on our career and kind of like the end and not even the end of what's next, I guess.
So one of the things that I always say is that you can't outwork a bad boss. And honestly, I earlier in my career and actually later in my career too, where I would have a insecure boss or just a terrible manager, I always felt like whether I worked with them, worked harder, tried to work around them, work harder so other people can know what I was doing, it's exhausting. And it's a game that it's very hard to win. And a lot of times you either have to move to another role or you need to move to another company because your you will there it will impact every aspect of your life, your home life, your mental health, your physical health, everything. And I just feel like we life is too short to sit in that level of misery, and it's just hard to outwork them. And so I just think keeping that in mind and focusing on what you can control, and also just focusing on your life outside of work definitely helps. Like when I was going through those situations, I started to enrich my life outside of work.
Mm.
I started to take on more hobbies. I like one there was one time where I was like I learned how to swim. I learned how to play golf, and it was all because I had a shitty manager and I needed to figure out a way to clock out from that job and clock into my life,
Mm.
and that gave me a lot more joy so that I didn't feel like I'm sitting in this misery. I'm on my computer all day and I'm so afraid of what they're going to say or what's going to happen next. Like you literally just have to figure out how to leave it at work and start enjoying your life outside of work.
That is a great point. Sometimes we just get sucked into this area of negativity and you get it. You spend a lot of hours of your day, of your week in that environment. So having something else to focus on that's positive and more optimistic is really important. I want to know, you worked at a lot of different companies, and what I almost called this podcast originally was There Is No Girls Club, because through my career, I never found, I guess let me back up. Everybody talks with the boys club, right? Where's the boys club? 100% it exists. Great, good for them. They actually support each other. Maybe they feel like we're excluded at times, but they're supporting each other. But what I run into is that there's a lack of that community and support amongst women throughout organizations. So, have you seen that? Have you dealt with that? And what's your advice for navigating that?
Yeah, I truly believe there is no girls club. I've had situations where I there a, a few girls were against me at work for various reasons, and I'm like at the end of the day the competition is never between us. Like it just isn't. So the fact that you're going at me does not elevate you in any way. Like there's still more men in this organization than there will ever be us. So like we should be able to bond together. But yeah, there's definitely not a girls club within the office. There have been pockets though. So I've worked with some amazing women in my career, many of them that I just still talk to today. So if you do find those pockets, it's like lean in, like I'm going to be a resource for you, and I hope that you're a resource for me. Trauma bonding is a real thing within the organization. And so when you find someone who gets it and that cares about you as an individual, like it is so important to just hold on to that. And I just know that this won't be forever. Like you working in that organization won't be forever. I worked at many companies throughout my life, and I was trying not to get sucked into the drama of what it is or of what the organization was, because I just knew it was just like a moment in time. And I actually, one of my content pieces I talked about it is like Mean Girls has never been cute in any phase of life, not in middle school, high school, college, corporate, which it still happens, but it's
Yep.
like it's just not okay.
I totally agree. And as you're saying that, it just reminds me, and I say this to my teenage daughters too, sometimes you have to drown out the noise, right? Like there's going to be people who are that way. They're miserable. They have their own issues. We're never going to change them. But it's just to your point, finding the people that you surround yourself with, have that circle and just ignore them. People catch on. They know that they're mean. They know that they're bitches, whatever it is. So it's just focusing on those who are around you and who are supporting you and know that their true colors show. And that's That is what it is. But you're right. There's a lot of amazing women out there. We just need to continue to build that and be intentional about that and just not only ignore them, but drown out their voices and the noise with
Right.
positivity and the support. So I totally agree with that. So you talk a lot about some major life upgrades. So talk to me about some of your biggest major life upgrades that you support.
Yeah, so one of the major life upgrades that has happened for me was one, deciding how much of my time I'm willing to exchange for money. I think that that has been one of those things that has completely changed my life. I think also figuring out how to create my own opportunities has been another one of those. Because for so long, when I was miserable in a job or had a reporting structure that wasn't ideal and bad bosses, all that kind of stuff, I just felt stuck and like it's either this or I'm unemployed and I don't know what I would do if I'm unemployed. So creating my own opportunities has been another one of those. And I just also feel like finding things that I love outside of work that makes me feel more whole has been completely life changing for me. That is like the hobbies that I've started to do. That is getting more involved in my community. I've never done that honestly because when I worked in an office, it was like get off, go home, dinner, get ready for bed, go to work the next day. And then working from home, I'm like on my computer pretty much all day long. So I wasn't really leaning into finding community outside of work. But I've done that now and it has just enriched my life greatly. So very thankful for those life upgrades.
That's a great one. And you kind of tied into this a little bit, but you talk about building something that's yours. And you've done that, right? You went from your corporate big companies to doing your own thing. So how did you get the courage to do that? And what has that process looked like for you?
So I started building it while I was working in corporate. I think that that helped to mitigate the risk because
Right.
I'm like, if it doesn't work, then I still have my job. But once it started to become sustainable, like I passed my corporate income multiple years, I'm like, okay, this is sustainable enough where I have a little runway. And so maybe I can clock out, I can take a sabbatical and just see what this could become. And it has been amazing. So I quit corporate in August of last year, literally changed my life. My life has been so much better since I was able to just go off on my own and do my own thing. And the way that I mitigated risk too is because I'm risk averse, is I went part-time working in corporate and that was life changing. I'm like 20 hours a week. Now I got this other time to focus on my business instead of having two full-time jobs pretty much. It was amazing. And yeah, I'm just so grateful. So when I started my LLC, I do content creation, I work with a lot of amazing brands, I travel and partnering with these brands that I never thought I would ever work with, like your IBM, Amazon, Anthropic. Those are just like the technical space, but also like brands like Lazy Boy, just absolutely life changing. I never thought I'd be able to do that, but I think I can attribute it to just going for it and being consistent. And even when I didn't know how it would turn out, because everybody starts at zero. You start like for content creation, you start at 0 followers. You start with not knowing what you're doing, and consistency is like definitely how you win the game. And I just was consistent with it, and it just paid off.
Which is amazing. And you talked about having like your compass and sort of your plan. So was this on your plan 5 years ago?
No, this was not on my bingo card at all. But I do feel like when you're in like really difficult situations, like you can sit in it or you can figure out a way out. And that's what I did. And so I actually talked about on my Substack recently was I wrote this note to myself. It's like 3 a.m. I was clearly having a terrible day at work. I think it was 2024. It was October 2024. I was like, in 6 months, I need to be financially stable enough to quit corporate America. I wrote it down and I just figured out a way to make it happen. I think if you believe that it can happen for you, it literally can happen for you, because what happens is you start to think about, okay, let me try this. What about this? And I just think it changes your mindset. And I think that's what happened for me is it completely rewired my mindset to figuring out like how to make this actually work for me. And it did.
So as you were going through that, you made your decision, right? You started making progress. Were you ever like, wait, maybe I should stop. Maybe I should go back and get to that consistent paycheck. Like, did you ever have those moments of doubt?
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely. So there was many times where I felt like, oh, I'm gonna quit, and I didn't, but something good would happen afterwards. So for example, when I was gonna quit the first time, I was like, nope, I'm not ready. I'm not gonna do this. And the next day, I had gotten the biggest partnership that I had ever had. I'm like, I everything was telling me that I should do it. I remember when another time I was going to quit, I didn't. And that month I had made like six figures in brand partnerships, and I was traveling, I was balancing it on. I'm like, again, like you could have taken this next step and bet on yourself. But again, like I said, I'm risk averse, and people that just like, oh, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm about to quit and figure it out. That is not me at all. I
That's
cannot.
awesome.
I'm just like, I try to tiptoe and then I'm like, oh, let me backtrack. But yeah, there was many times where I wanted to, but then didn't. And then finally, I think going part-time really helped me to see that, okay, I can do this.
You
And if
do
I
it.
did leave, yeah, ease into it. Exactly. That was how I was able to do it.
And never mind that you didn't also mention that you also have a baby, a recent, like a new-ish baby, right? So that just adds to like the pressure and the like, oh my gosh, I have to be a responsible mom on all those pieces too.
Oh my God. Yeah. And it's kind of wild because again, I feel like every time I thought about leaving, something big would happen. And what it happened, like I quit in August. We adopted our baby girl. I quit in August, and then we find out about this adoption case, and she was born really early, and so I was having to travel back and forth to where she was. And I'm like, if I hadn't have quit, of course I didn't know this was going to happen, but if I had not have quit my job, we wouldn't have been able to do that. Like I wouldn't have had the time to do that. So I think everything happens for a reason, and just listening to your gut it always helps you to make the right decision. And I'm just so thankful it all worked out, and now I get to be more present for my baby. We have this newborn, and I have multiple businesses, and it's just really nice to be more present for the family that we're growing.
Oh, I love that. I'm so happy for you. And, you put in the hard work, you've done all the right things. You had the plan. The plan sometimes goes a different way, but here, to your point, I feel that way too. Like things work out for a reason. And sometimes you don't see it right initially, and then you're like, oh, okay, actually, this is really great. This was great timing. So, I think that's really important. Is let's all have a plan. Let's all work really hard, work on the visibility. But at the end of the day, sometimes things just have a different path than what we anticipated for. So it's being able to pivot and not be completely risk averse. So I'm glad you took that risk.
Yeah. Yeah, and I
Well,
think it's also starting before you're ready, because a lot of
mm,
time, like to your point, we do all have a plan, whether it be like, oh, I have this corporate job and it's stable, it's a stable paycheck. At the same time, you still have to be mindful of like, okay, what if this happened? Like, what's worst case? What's best case? And I do feel like creating something that it's kind of like a plan B is definitely the way to go in this environment that we're in.
very true, especially this environment that we're in. It's a little crazy.
Mhm.
Well, Roxy, thank you so much for being here and sharing your hard truths. I love them. If people want to connect with you, where's the best place to find you?
Yeah, so if you want to connect with me, I'm on Instagram, I'm on TikTok. It's at Roxy Couse. I'm also on Threads, Roxy Couse, and YouTube, and then LinkedIn as well, Roxy Couse.
Awesome. And we'll link all of that in the show notes as well. So thank you, Roxy, and best of luck.
Thank you so much, and thanks for having me.
I love this conversation with Roxy because it was such a good reminder that being great at your job is not enough. You have to be visible. You have to speak to your impact. You have to understand the game you're playing, even if you wish there wasn't a game. And maybe the biggest takeaway, your career is personal and no one is coming to save it for you. Roxy said it so clearly. If you don't sit in the driver's seat of your career, someone else will. And she has truly lived by these words, even when it wasn't her original career plan. We'll link Roxy's information in the show notes so you can follow her and her work. If you enjoyed this show, please share it with a friend. And as always, stay loud and stay lifted.